Welcome to the show. Chris Graham, joined by Crystal Graham. We're here on Augusta Free Press on Facebook, on YouTube, also on our podcast. And we're going to talk some news from the week. And Crystal, we're going to start with you spent a good part of one of your days this week trying to get the latest on a case involving an Augusta County man who allegedly shot the dog of a neighbor. And that case has been slowly making its way through the local court system. Can you give our listeners and viewers the latest on what's going on there?
Sure. So on Tuesday, a preliminary hearing was held in Augusta County General District Court for Lewis Davis. And actually, his wife, Teresa, also faced some charges, but we'll talk about that in just a minute. But the main case involved a dog named Bear, a service dog that belongs to Joseph Sandy and his wife, Edith, and was shot and killed mid-September in Augusta County. And so Lewis Davis obviously faces charges. The preliminary hearing was basically to determine if there was enough to send it to the circuit court grand jury. After a short hearing, it was determined that there was, in fact, enough evidence to move it forward. So it's now going to the grand jury on January 22nd. What came out during the trial was an Augusta County deputy testified basically to the circumstances surrounding what had happened. And he went out to the home the day after the shooting took place and basically said that Lewis Davis gave him a number of stories as to what had possibly happened the day before ultimately he told the officer that he shot the dog with a .44 caliber Magnum gun. And so again, a revolver. And that was according to the deputy who testified at the trial. So I believe his name was Michael Roan. And so anyway, that basically he was the only person that testified that day. There will likely be more people testifying in the future, but he said that he had met with the Sandys shortly after the incident the following day and that they found a blood stain in the road. He said that Lewis Davis told him, in fact, that there had been no threatening behavior by the dog, that the dog had not in any way gone after him, his family. Apparently he has a couple of cats, but that Davis had basically told him that some other neighborhood dogs had dealt with his cat, had some issues with his cats in the past. So there's no real understanding here as far as motive or anything of that nature. Davis does face one felony count of animal cruelty and one misdemeanor charge related to reckless handling of a firearm.
So you went out last week, Crystal, and actually met with the Sandys, Joseph and Edith Sandy, at their home in Augusta County. And I think having been there, you got a little bit of different perspective, perhaps, than just covering a story the traditional way. For example, I think one thing you learned was that the dog, Buddy Bear, could not have been very far off his property when this happened. So, I mean, this really throws, what you've learned kind of throws some different perspective into this case.
Yeah, the Sandys are new to the area. They moved here from Arizona, and they'd only been here a very short time when this incident took place. They live on Rip Rap Road, which is in Augusta County. It has a Waynesboro address, even though it is Augusta County. And
it's very remote. It's very
right.
rural. Yeah.
Yeah, I did not have cell phone service out there. I went to SOS mode once I was at their home. But basically, Mormon Gap Road kind of runs in between the Davises and the Sandys property. And what apparently happened, when the dog was shot, likely had just escaped the fence. Again, they were new to the area, so maybe they didn't have the fence exactly the way that they wanted it at that point, and was about 6 to 8 feet at most off their property when the dog was shot and killed.
And this wouldn't have, and 6 to 8 feet off their property. It's not like these are good sized properties. They're not like houses right on top of each other out in this rural area.
No, there is a homeowners association affiliated with these properties. It is considered a neighborhood, I believe. I'm trying to remember, Orchard something subdivision. But anyway, each of the properties are at least 5 acres as a minimum. So these are large lots, large properties. But you do see, other houses nearby. There certainly are neighbors. One of the other things that came before the court that day actually had to do with some what they call preliminary protective orders. So after Mr. Davis was granted bond by circuit court, both the Sandys, Edith and Joseph, and their neighbor, Renee Roberts, sought protective orders against the couple, just to protect them as they move forward. Now, Lewis Davis is not supposed to be on the property there, but at the preliminary hearing, the one related to the protective orders, a neighbor did testify that he's in fact been on the property, according to her, as recently as Sunday of this week, which would violate, you would think, the bond, since he's not supposed to be there. He's supposed to reside at an alternate address in Waynesboro. I believe it's his daughter's address that he's supposed to be at. So that did come up. The judge ultimately did grant the Sandys the preliminary protective order through May 28th. And essentially that order protects both of them from the husband and wife, from Teresa and Louis Davis.
Crystal, I think I've lost you. Just so you can hear me. Your screen is frozen up on me here. We'll see if we can check on the technical issue as we are wrapping up our chat. In fact, Crystal is now connecting back with audio. Those who are watching both on, there you are, Crystal, you're back.
I'm back. I don't know exactly when I broke up.
You were in the middle of explaining the, I believe the restrictive order or the protective order.
Okay, so essentially the protective order for Joseph and Edith Sandy was granted by the judge primarily because of the reckless handling of the firearm that happened so nearby. And Renee Roberts she's the neighbor that I mentioned earlier. She also is in very close proximity to the Davis's home, and she has dogs, which she said that Mr. Davis has been acted hostile towards in the past as well. But the judge granted her preliminary protective order through May 28th also, but only against Mr. Davis. It did not include Teresa Davis in her case.
I brought up the lack of proximity, perhaps, between these residences, because I mean, you mentioned that the weapon was a .44 Magnum. It was not. We're not talking about some guy with a rifle a couple hundred yards away. A .44 Magnum to use that to shoot at anything implies proximity, close proximity. So, was based on you being at you've been out there now. I mean, and you saw where the dog was killed. He would have had to have been walking up there to be able to perpetrate this, if this is the case.
Yeah, it was dark when I was there, so I didn't actually get to go to the scene where Bear was shot. But what I will tell you is that Officer Roan, First Sergeant Roan with the Augusta County Sheriff's Office, did testify that, as I said earlier, that multiple stories were given to him as to what actually happened. The first one being that the gun was shot and that it must have ricocheted and hit the dog. Yeah. And as well as multiple other stories that he shot it from his porch and other things. But ultimately, what seems to have happened, at least according to what the officer says that Louis Davis told him, was that he was shot and with this Magnum revolver. And so more than likely it happened at close range. And for those of you who have followed the story or who haven't followed the story, Joseph Sandy was home when this happened. And so he did get the dog and put it in the back of his truck, and he drove it to a nearby animal hospital, and the dog did die on the way there. From what I understand, there's been some forensics done related to the dog's death, and apparently the dog was paralyzed the instant that he was shot. So where you saw the dried blood is actually where he was shot, and where he didn't get up from that point.
Presumably all this will come out later. Now, you mentioned that, just to reiterate for our listeners, viewers, what you were a part of this week, covering this week, was a preliminary hearing. Normally, defendants in these kind of cases will waive that, but he went ahead and went through with the preliminary hearing. Then it goes now to grand jury. And then if a grand jury holds up and returns charges, then it'll go to a full trial sometime later next year. So
Yeah. So that will happen next year. I guess from what I understand is that the defense will have the choice if the grand jury certifies it and it moves forward. The defense will have the choice between a jury trial or a bench trial, as it's known, and it likely will occur sometime in 2024.
that's right. That's right. Well, okay, now let's switch gears. We have a couple more stories we want to talk about. I want to talk about the one involving you almost getting scammed. Here's Crystal Graham, who she writes scam alert stories, fraud alert stories all the time for Augusta Free Press. Crystal, we're sitting on the couch last night watching TV, and she tells me this tale about how, oh my gosh, somebody wants to sell us Taylor Swift tickets for face value. Take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just some random person, or it wasn't on a message board or something like that. But
It
the
turned out
message,
it was a random person.
well, as it turns out,
I'm skipping
but
ahead there a little bit, but
the message actually appeared to originate from someone that my sister and I are both friends with on Facebook. It's someone that we've known since childhood, saying that essentially she had 2 to 4 tickets to this Indianapolis concert next year in November 1st in Indianapolis, and that she was selling them for $400 each, which would likely be around face value. On resellers right now, they're going for $1,200 to $1,500 dollars per ticket. And there's kind of that saying, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. In our case, I trusted this person. I mean, this is somebody who was a family friend and who had wanted to come to my dad's funeral a couple of years ago. So when she said she had tickets available, I was like, great. My sister had already mentioned to me that she'd like to go to this November 1st concert anyway. So if we could get tickets less than the resellers, great. But as the conversation went on, the person was persistent, and I say the person now because it turned out not to be my friend. It turned out that her account was hacked, but we didn't learn that until a little bit later. So it turns out that my friend was saying basically, can you send this by Venmo, something called Zelle, or PayPal? And you would think in this day and age that I would have Venmo, but it's probably the most used one among parent groups and things of that nature these days. But I don't have it. And so I suggested that I could send it by PayPal. Thankfully for me, PayPal actually flagged it. The person asked me to send it friends and family, which of course I was happy to do. Since I knew the person, personally, and tried to send that to them through PayPal. PayPal basically wanted me to somehow log into my bank account to prove that the funds were available for that. Of course, if you use friends and family, you're not protected the same way you are with other sellers. So again, that person was trying to get around that thing there. And so basically, I reached back out to my friend, my so-called friend, the person I thought was my friend that I was corresponding with, and said that I was having issues with PayPal. And they said, well, can you just break it up into a few payments? And my first feeling was like, yeah, sure. I don't see why I couldn't do that. But then I asked a simple question. I knew the person worked in Augusta County. They live in Augusta County. Hey, why don't I just bring you cash tomorrow? That seems like an easier solution, right? Who's going to turn down cash for tickets? And the person said simply, I didn't ask for cash. I want the money through an app. I don't need cash. And I thought to myself, well, that doesn't sound right. So basically what I found out is I asked a simple question: how do we know each other? And at
well,
that
but
point,
there was also they used the word colleague
oh,
at one
yeah, or
point.
so
Yeah,
early in
yeah.
the conversation, they said they did not have a PayPal account, but their colleague had a PayPal account, and that did raise a small red flag initially because we don't generally refer to our coworkers as colleagues here in the United States. But
Well, you
my
don't,
thought was that's what she was probably saying, was just that she had bought tickets with a coworker. And so I kind of let that red flag go. And then the PayPal happened, which was kind of the second red flag. I don't know if that particular email address had some fraudulent activity associated with it, or if there was some other reason that was flagged. I use PayPal regularly. I've never been asked to go to that next level before for that. So that was a little bit weird. But then the big gimme one was when the person said, I don't need cash. That's why I wanted you to pay via an app. If they had just said, I have 3 other people interested and I'm going to give them to the first person who pays me the money, I probably would have found another way to send the money. My sister was texting me saying, oh, well, don't worry. Venmo's really easy to set up. So I was already looking at alternatives, but that was the big red flag. So when I asked, how do you know me? And the person didn't respond, that's when I knew something was definitely up. And so I had to give the bad news to my sister that we weren't going to get tickets for $400 each to go to the concert. And then I posted something on the Facebook message. I reported it to Facebook and posted on there that it was a scam, hoping to stop other people from seeing it. But of course, that person, whoever they were, did have access to her account, which means they simply deleted my comment. And then they blocked me, so I couldn't go back to the page. My sister, I asked her if she was blocked from the page. She wasn't. So she went to the page and also reported it to Facebook. So my hope is that it got taken down. But what I found when I did a little more research is this is very common for Facebook profiles, for Instagram pages to be hacked by people. Usually the going price is $400 a ticket. And then in many cases, these tickets are sold like 8 times, before the person discovers it and tries to shut it down. So when you're talking about, $400 a ticket, 4 tickets, $1,600 a person times 8 or more, there's obviously a huge,
That's $12,000 plus dollars. Yeah, that's pretty good scam.
Huge gain. And so these scammers really, really want your money. And so they're going to all these links to get it. And we came that close, Chris, to actually having $1,600 stolen from us.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Hey, one thing we didn't think about, Crystal, there's a computer sitting behind you to your left. I doubt they blocked me. So we should check and see how the process of how progressive of your report has gone on that one.
Yeah, good call on that. But anyway, it happens very regularly, and there's been tons of complaints to the BBB. The story that we published on Augusta Free Press today did include some tips. And of course, one of them is that standard. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. And that's right. And I did text the friend as well to let her know that her account had likely been compromised. I haven't heard back. I'm not 100% sure that it's a good number because, like I said, the last time I probably talked to him was a couple years ago. So.
Last story, let's get into the weather. In our part of Virginia, it's very nice. Temperatures are right around 60 degrees today. Very, very nice weather for December in our part of the world. It's supposed to be this way tomorrow. Then Sunday, it's going to be warm. Also, boy, rain, over an inch of rain, 40-mile-an-hour winds, thunderstorms, and then what else could there be? Crystal, you got
it's a big change. It's likely to come in sometime Saturday night into Sunday. Batten down those Christmas decorations. Make sure you've got extra pins in them. If you're worried about anything blowing away, probably bring it in because wind gusts are supposed to get as high as 45 miles per hour here in our area. Along the coast, they could be 50 miles per hour plus here in Virginia. So 1 to 2 inches of rain expected. It sounds like there's even a possibility that as these temperatures rapidly drop 10 to 15 degrees Sunday night, that there could be some, I'm going to say it, Chris, it's a 4-letter word. There could be some snow mixed in. Nothing doesn't sound like anything that's going to accumulate, but definitely there could be the possibility of snow, at least in the Shenandoah Valley in our part of Virginia. So sounds like it's going to be a big, messy day and a good day to kind of stay inside, maybe watch some Christmas movies, drink some hot chocolate, and stay out of the weather. That's for sure. Waynesboro, unfortunately, was planning an LL Bean pop-up shop and like a lobster food truck Sunday in downtown Waynesboro. And I have a feeling, unfortunately, that those plans are spoiled. The LL Bean pop-up truck is already canceled. I don't know if it's weather related or not, just that they announced a cancellation for that today. So definitely a day if you're making plans to think about staying inside. For me personally, I'm getting LASIK surgery tomorrow. So it's going to be a great day of recovery for me. I won't have to go anywhere. And I'm personally pretty happy about that.
Yeah, well, lots of weather coming our way this weekend. Looks nice next week, so that we'll get a recovery time from there. We're just
definitely. Normally, this time of year, my AccuWeather contact Thomas Kine says that normally this time of year we're dealing with highs in the 40s, and next week should be highs in the 50s. So it's hard to complain about December weather when temperatures are in the 50s.
That's right. More time to get outside before Christmas. Well, Crystal Graham, thank you so much for your time, sharing your insight on these issues. And for our listeners, viewers out there, if you have any news tips to email us, Crystal, her address is crystal@augustafreepress.com. And I am Chris@augustafreepress.com. Feel free to drop us a line. Everyone have a great day.